Alright, today we're going to be doing a comparison of two lenses that definitely could be very, very big contenders for what could be someone's first lens they buy after their kit lens. These could possibly come in some bundles with camera kits, so these are very, very popular options for budget lenses. Now on the left we have Canon's 55-250 IS lens. Now this is not the newer version with the STM autofocus motor, this is the slightly older version. It still has image stabilization, but it does not have the newer STM autofocus system. And of course on the right we have Canon's very famous 50mm f1.8 prime lens. Now these lenses might seem relatively different at first, but there are definitely enough similarities that it's worth comparing. To start off, these are both about $100 used, so these are extremely cheap. So if you're considering buying a lens alongside your camera kit, something this cheap would definitely be a very attractive option. Now another thing is of course the focal lengths. Of course 250 is drastically more telephoto than 50mm, but at 55mm you're getting basically the exact same field of view as the nifty 50. So when the 55-250 IS is zoomed out all the way, its field of view basically acts as the same purposes that the 50 would. So there are definitely enough similarities between these lenses that if you're looking into possibly getting one of them, it would make sense to at least look into the other before you bought it. Now when talking about what cameras these lenses work with, the 55-250 actually works with many less cameras than the 50mm f1.8. Now the 55-250 is what's considered an EFS lens, so it only works with Canon's APS-C sized cameras. Now if you're watching this video, chances are more than likely your camera will work with the 55-250. The best way to check is if you take the lens off the camera, look if the lens mount has a white dot on it. If it does, that means it will work. If it only has a red dot, that means it will not work with the 55-250. Now on the other hand, the 50mm f1.8 works with all of Canon's SLR bodies, film or digital, that have been released since 1987. Now when it comes to build quality, I actually probably can't say a winner. These are basically two of the most plasticky lenses Canon have ever released, so these are both very relatively weak built lenses. But on the other hand, that's not always a bad thing, because that makes these lenses extremely light. So the ability to have, for example, a telephoto zoom that goes so far and weighs so little is actually very convenient. So yes, both these lenses are relatively weak, but on the other hand, they're also very light, which is definitely a very good thing. Alright, let's test the autofocus first of the 55-250. Let's flick on the autofocus, and let's see how it goes. As you see, it really isn't that fast, and I'd say that might actually be the biggest drawback of this lens, because with a lens like this you might be doing nature photography, events, whatever, but basically a lot of stuff that's going to have very fast moving subjects. So such a slow autofocus, I'd honestly say, is the biggest flaw of this lens. Now it doesn't make a huge amount of sound, but it can definitely be heard. Now this lens definitely doesn't make enough sound when it's autofocusing to be a point of concern, but you definitely will hear it a little bit. Alright, now we're going to test the autofocus of the 50mm f1.8. Let's flick it onto autofocus, and now let's give it a try. So as you see, it is definitely quite a bit faster and also noticeably more accurate than the autofocus system of the 55-250. Now I should point out that you definitely will hear quite a bit more sound with the 50mm f1.8. Don't get me wrong, it really isn't worth complaining about, it's really an extremely minor issue, but I should point out that you will be getting more sound with the 50mm f1.8. Now I should point out that not only do neither of these lenses have Canon's new STM autofocus motor, but they both lack the very common USM autofocus motor. So these are both not necessarily the king of autofocus, but if I had to pick one, I would definitely go with the 50. Now of course the main reason someone would pick the 55-250 over the 50mm f1.8 is probably because it can zoom. I mean, this actually has a very useful zoom range, and on an APS-C camera, which is the only sort of camera this lens works on, 250mm actually becomes a staggering 400mm field of view. So that's actually a very solid reach. So I'm going to zoom in all the way here onto these flowers. Of course we started out at 55mm, and here we are at 250mm. So as you see, this has a pretty strong reach. Now another thing I like about having such a long focal length is even if you're at a very narrow aperture, and I'm at the relatively narrow aperture now of f9, you could still get a very shallow depth of field, which is nice, and of course you wouldn't be able to do that on a lens that's as far zoomed out like the 50mm f1.8. Now, neither of these lenses have bad image quality at all, especially considering how cheap they are. But if you want the best image quality for the price range, you're going to have to go 50mm f1.8. Now, the 55 through 250 by no means has bad image quality. You're getting very solid image quality with solid sharpness that is definitely significantly better than what you'll get from the 18 through 55 kit lens. So if you're coming from that, you're getting better image quality with either of these lenses. But the 55 through 250 does have some noticeable chromatic aberrations and some softness in some pictures. On the other hand, the 50mm f1.8 does have some optical flaws, but the image quality that gives you, especially at narrow apertures around f8 to f11, is stupendous to the point of being basically flawless. So if you want the best image quality for the price range, you're going to have to go 50mm f1.8. So overall, I can't honestly decide a winner between these two lenses. If what you want is the best image quality of the two, you're going to have to go with the 50. But if this is actually the second lens you're buying to your 18 through 55 kit lens, in all honesty, the 55 through 250 might be a more practical choice. If you think about it, adding that extra zoom range to your arsenal really gives you so much more you can do with your photography, like wildlife or whatever. So it might actually be more practical to go with the 55 through 250 if this is the second lens you're ever buying. It really all depends on what you need. I hope this helped. If you get the chance, definitely try both these lenses for yourself. But anyway, I hope this was very helpful, and thank you very much for watching.